Valinor, once bathed in light, now stood in mourning. The two trees had withered, their radiance lost forever. Morgoth, the great betrayer, had stolen the Silmarils and fled into the darkness. To Fëanor, it was not just theft, it was the deepest wound, an unforgivable insult. His heart burned with fury, and in his rage he prepared to utter words that would shape the fate of the Noldor forever. For him there was no future in Valinor. There was only one path forward, to reclaim the Silmarils, no matter the cost.
Under the darkened sky of Valinor, Fëanor stood before his 7 sons, fire burning in his eyes. His voice rang with fury as he swore a terrible oath, one that would bind them beyond life and death. No being in Arda, not even the Valar, shall keep the Silmarils from our grasp. We shall pursue them beyond the ends of the world, and woe to any who stand in our way. His sons, their hearts inflamed by their father's wrath, raised their swords and swore alongside him. The words of their vow echoed like a curse, carried by the wind across the grieving lands of Aman. Yet in that moment, unseen forces stirred. The Valar, silent in sorrow, watched as doom took root. For such an oath, spoken in rage and pride, would demand a price, and that price would be paid in blood.
The words of Fëanor spread like wildfire among the Noldor. His voice, filled with passion and fury, stirred the hearts of his kin. "Will you sit idle while the enemy holds what is rightfully ours?" he demanded. Many answered his call, their spirits ignited by dreams of glory and vengeance. Yet not all agreed. Fingolfin, Fëanor's half-brother, warned of folly. "We cannot defy the Valar without consequence," he said. But doubt was drowned by Fëanor's fire. "Those who wish to remain in darkness may do so," he declared, "but we go to reclaim our birthright." And so the Noldor stood divided. Some sought justice, others feared doom, but all knew that the world they had known was now lost.
The Noldor, armed and determined, marched toward the shores of Aman, ready to leave Valinor forever. Their banners flew high, their voices filled with defiance. But as they approached the edge of the world, a figure stood before them, Mandos, the doomsman of the Valar. His voice was cold as stone. "Go then, if you must," he said, "but know this. You are exiles, cursed by your own oath. Blood shall stain your hands, and sorrow shall be your companion. You shall find no lasting home, no peace, and even should you reclaim the Silmarils, they will burn you." A heavy silence fell. Some wavered, but Fëanor did not. "Let the doom fall upon us," he cried, and without hesitation he led his people forward. The Noldor, bound by pride and vengeance, followed him into the unknown, never realizing that their fate had already been sealed.
The Noldor reached the shores of Aman, but a cruel decision awaited them. Fëanor had seized the Teleri ships by force, staining the departure with blood. Yet now, as they gazed across the dark waters, it became clear. There were not enough vessels for all. Fëanor, filled with disdain for those who had doubted him, made his choice. He took the first group across the sea, landing upon the cold shores of Middle-earth. But in the dead of night, as his followers rested, he acted. "We have no need of cowards," he declared, and with a heart hardened by pride, he set fire to the ships. Flames roared into the sky, their glow seen even from Valinor. Fingolfin and his people watched in horror, abandoned upon the shore. The way forward was gone. The only path that remained lay across the grinding ice.
Betrayed and abandoned, Fingolfin and his people stood upon the darkened shores. The flames of Losgar had faded, leaving them stranded. "We have been cast aside," they murmured. But Fingolfin, though wounded by his brother's betrayal, did not yield. "Then we shall carve our own path," he declared. Before them stretched the Helcaraxë, the grinding ice, a frozen wasteland of shifting glaciers and merciless storms. There was no other way. With grim determination, they stepped onto the treacherous ice. Days turned to weeks, and the cold claimed many. The sea swallowed the weak, the winds howled like Morgoth's laughter, and the sunless sky offered no mercy. Yet, through suffering, they endured. And when at last they set foot upon the lands of Middle-earth, their hearts burned with a new fire. They had been exiles, betrayed and lost, but now they were something more, survivors, ready to face the war that awaited them.
As Fingolfin and his people emerged from the grinding ice, the sky above them began to change. A golden light, unseen before in Arda, rose over the horizon, the first sunrise. The darkened lands of Middle-earth were bathed in new radiance, and for the first time the shadow of Morgoth trembled. Though weary from their perilous march, the Noldor felt renewed. "This is a sign," Fingolfin said. "Not all hope is lost." With newfound strength they marched upon the gates of Angband, their banners high, their spirits unbroken. But Morgoth, seeing their arrival, did not meet them in battle. He feared the wrath of these exiles, their strength forged in suffering, and so he barred his gates, retreating into his fortress. The Noldor had come to claim their vengeance, yet the war was only beginning.
Fingolfin and his people stood before the gates of Angband, their banners high, their spirits unbroken. The first sunrise of Arda bathed the land in golden light, and for the first time Morgoth trembled. He, the great deceiver, the master of shadow, did not dare face them. Instead, he barred his gates, retreating into his fortress. Fingolfin, undeterred, struck the black gates with his sword. "Come forth, black foe of the world," he cried, but only silence answered. The Noldor, filled with rage and vengeance, did not waver. They spread across Beleriand, raising mighty kingdoms, Gondolin, Nargothrond, and Hithlum. Yet the oath of Fëanor loomed over them like a curse. Blood had already been spilled, and more would follow. They had come seeking vengeance, but the war for the Silmarils was only beginning. The doom of the Noldor had been sealed, and the price had yet to be paid.
The Noldor had crossed the sea, defied the Valar, and survived the cruel wrath of Arda itself. Yet they were no longer the people who once dwelled in the light of Valinor. The oath of Fëanor bound them to a relentless fate, one of war, of betrayal, of bloodshed. In the deep shadows of Angband, Morgoth watched and smiled. His enemies had come to him, but he would not strike yet. He would let them grow strong, let them hope, only to shatter them when they least expected. The war for the Silmarils had begun, and the curse of the Noldor had only just taken root.
Thus the Noldor stepped into a new world, bound by an oath that would shape their destiny. They had left behind the light of Valinor, chasing the fire of vengeance. But their road would not lead only to glory. It would be paved with sorrow. The Silmarils, the very jewels they swore to reclaim, would bring ruin to all who sought them. And though the Noldor had come as warriors, they did not yet see the full weight of their doom. This was only the beginning. The war for Middle-earth had truly begun.
See you beyond the rings, and don't forget to subscribe.